Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be doing my September wrap up. I haven't done a recent reads video in a while, and I read a lot of books in September. So I'm gonna be doing a wrap up in this video. It will probably be kind of long, sorry about that, but I've got 15 books to talk about. So yeah, September was a really good reading month for me. I read 15 books, which is way more than my normal, but it was good. So I'm just gonna jump into the books now. The first one I finished in September was Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. And this is about a girl named Myung who is a I'm gonna say this wrong. Gumiho. Gumiho. I think that's how you say it. So she's a gumiho, which is a nine-tailed fox that devours the energy of men to survive. So she's actually half. She's half human, half gumiho. So one day while Myung is on a hunt, she comes across this boy who's in danger, and she makes this split-second decision to save his life. Of course, that decision has all types of consequences with it. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I was kind of in the middle of the road with this one. I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I'm not sure if I'll continue with the series. Even though the epilogue is pretty mysterious and kind of sets up for a sequel, I felt like the ending of this book, minus the epilogue, wrapped up pretty well that you could read it as a standalone. There was a twist towards the end with one particular character that I thought was surprising. So that was interesting to see that. But it also, at the same time, felt kind of out of left field. Unless I missed some subtle hints along the way. That twist that came in, I was like, interesting. But I don't think anyone could predict that coming because I don't think there was any subtle hints to it. I will say I really liked the mythology in here. I really liked the stories of the Gamiho and how they originated, how they came to be. I thought that was super interesting, and I love finding out more about that in this story. This story can be slow at times, and there were times when I wanted there to be more happening and more to the story. But overall, it was an okay read. This is a romance fantasy, so it is going to focus more heavily on the characters and their relationships. So just know that going into this. So if you like that type of book, this may be for you. Or otherwise, you might want to stay away. The next book that I finished was A Reaper at the Gates by Sabah Tahir. This is the third book in the Ember and the Ashes series. I can't really talk about this one without spoiling stuff for the first 2 books. So I'll kind of give you a quick synopsis of the first book. The first one has dual perspectives. So we follow 2 main characters, Leia and Elias. And Leia, her family was just killed. Her brother was arrested and taken away. And so she kind of goes to this rebel group and tries to get their help with freeing her brother. And Elias, his perspective, he's always grown up in the Empire. He was always taught to obey and, follow the rules, but he's always, wanted to escape the Empire. He wants to be free of it. So he's really just looking for that escape and a way to be free. I gave this 3.5 stars, and it might have been higher if I was in the mood for the story at the time. But I had reread An Ember in the Ashes for the reading rush, and then I decided I was going to continue with the series, so I read the second book. But then by the time I got to the third one, A Reaper at the Gates, I kind of wasn't interested in, a high fantasy story at the time, and my mood kind of shifted. So I think that really affected my rating for this book, because I just wasn't really in the mood to read it at the time. But I pushed through and I finished it, mainly because I already checked out the book from the library and I was going to have to return it soon. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to push through and read it, because I gotta return this to the library. So I did that, and I do think it's a good book. It just wasn't really what I was in the mood for at the time. Another downside, I think, that made me rate this a little bit lower was because I thought this was the final book in the series. I thought it was a trilogy, and this was gonna be the final book, and I would get to the end and find out, how it wraps up and how everything ends up. And as I got towards the end, I realized there's too much stuff left and not enough pages for it to wrap up well with this ending. So I was like, this is not going to be the end of the series. And I got to the end and I was like, yep, there's going to be another book. And so I think that's another reason I rated it a little bit lower, because I was hoping it was the final book and I would find out how everything turns out. But it's not. The next book is Awake by Natasha Preston. And this is a thriller. For this one, I'm going to read you the Goodreads synopsis because it's really short and summarizes it. So it says Scarlett Garner doesn't remember anything before the age of 4, but a car accident changes everything. She starts to remember pieces of a past that frighten her, a past her parents hid from her, and a secret that could get her killed. I gave this 2.5 stars. This really reads like a Lifetime movie, honestly. And I feel like this one requires you to suspend too much belief. So first off, I didn't think it was realistic for her to be so obsessed with these memories or not being able to remember things before the age of 4. Like, most of us don't remember things before the age of 4. Like, that's right around the age when people start developing their memory. 3-4 years old, that's right around the age you start to remember things. Before that, no one remembers when they're a baby. No one remembers when they're 2 years old. Like, so for her to be so obsessed about this, I was like, yeah, no, that's not realistic at all. I will say this is a pretty fast-paced book. And for mystery thrillers, that's a good thing. It's good when they're fast-paced. But in this case, it did not work because a lot of the story was focused on the romance, the relationship between Scarlett and Noah. And because it was so fast-paced, their relationship was very much insta-love. And so if you hate insta love, you hate those relationships, you probably want to stay away from this one because it is super insta lovey. So in this case, the fast pace kind of works against it. Also, the plot was very predictable. None of the twists in here were surprising at all. But I will say the writing is very easy to get into. And I like the writing because despite the predictability of the story, there's something about Preston's writing that just makes you want to keep turning the pages. And I read her other book, The Cellar, um, in August. I read that before this. And again, I had the like, same feelings about that one as well. It read like a Lifetime movie. It was very predictable. You could see things coming. But still, something about her writing just compels you to keep turning the pages. Maybe it's because it's such a fast paced book, but you just fly through it and keep going. Overall, this one was okay. I do think The Cellar is a little bit better. It doesn't have you suspend as much belief, but overall, this one was okay. So the next book is Dreamfall by Amy Plum. And this is a duology. The first book is Dreamfall. And it's about a group of kids who have insomnia and they get signed up for this experimental procedure to try to cure them of their insomnia. But of course, soon after they begin the experiment, something goes wrong and they end up stuck in this like shared dream world where they'll have to survive their worst nightmares or risk never waking up again. So this one, the synopsis sounded so super interesting. And the first book, I loved it. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It did take me a little bit longer than I expected to really get into the story, despite the fact that it is a fast paced read. But once I got into the story, I didn't want to put it down. So the story is told from the perspective of 3 teens that are in the dream world, and then also Jamie, who is a pre-med student that's like observing the experiment for a project of hers. I really liked Jamie's perspective the most, and just like seeing what was going on in the outside world while the kids were in the dream world, like seeing what the scientists were trying to do and how they were working to try to wake him up. So I liked her perspective and like some of what she some of the information she got and found out about the kids. So I wish we could have had more from her perspectives. Her chapters were pretty short and I wish they were a bit longer. But I still really enjoyed it. I will say none of the dreams or none of the nightmares that the kids go through, none of them seem scary to me. But then again, I've said before, like, I'm pretty hard to scare for horror books. Although I will say the last dream that they showed in the first book, that one was pretty creepy. And then the ending was just frustrating, but so good. And the way it ended, I was like, I need the next book right now, right this minute. So I went on Amazon right after and ordered the second book. Of course, I had to wait 2 days, but I got it. And so I went right through to the second book, which the second one is Neverwake. And I was super excited to read this one, but then I was super disappointed. It's like, why? It started off so good, and then the ending was such a disappointment. I ended up giving Neverwake 2.5 stars. It did keep me turning the pages and wanting to find out how the kids were gonna get out of this dream world. But then when we got to the end, there were just some things that happened that I didn't think would have happened. It didn't feel realistic. It wasn't realistic for the story or for the characters to have this type of ending. It felt way too easy, and I was disappointed with that. I was like, this these characters wouldn't have done this. This is no, you're making it like wanting to wrap it up too easily, and so I was disappointed with that. I think if the ending was done better and handled better, I think this would have could have been a favorite duology of mine, depending on how they did the ending. But sadly, that is not the case. Okay, so the next book is Vanishing Girls by Lauren Oliver. And this one is about two sisters, Dara and Nick, who used to be super close until one day an accident leaves Dara scarred and the sisters are estranged. And then Dara vanishes on her birthday. Nick believes her sister's disappearance is connected to another young girl's disappearance in town. And so she tries to piece together clues from both disappearances to try and find her sister. So this one, another disappointing read. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. I actually almost DNF'd this book, and I'm still surprised I didn't. I was waiting for this book to get to the actual mystery of Dara's disappearance. I thought it was gonna mostly focus on her disappearance and Nick's search for her and finding these clues. I thought that's what it was gonna focus on, but a big part of it focused more on before her disappearance, Dara and Nick's relationship, and their estrangement and like the animosity between the two of them. I felt like it focused a lot more on that before we actually got to the mystery part. And we don't really get to see the mystery until like the last third of the book. Then when we finally do unravel the mystery, it ends up being a pretty big disappointment. It was super underwhelming, and I was just bored throughout most of this book. The twist in here wasn't bad, but I felt like it's been done before and it's been done much better. If you're expecting like a fast-paced mystery thriller, this isn't the book for that. So just be aware of that going in. So the next book is Sawkill Girls by Claire Legrand. And for this, I'm going to say yes, finally a recent book that I've read that lives up to the hype. Because I feel like I haven't been having much luck with hyped up books this year. But this one, I was like, okay, this was actually worth the hype. I did really enjoy this one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This one reminded me a lot of Stranger Things, which I love Stranger Things, so I really enjoyed this one. And I can totally see this being adapted as a show or movie. I really hope it is, because that would be awesome. This book is really dark, but I wouldn't necessarily say scary, at least not to me. But then again, I've already established I don't get scared easily by horror books. But this is a dark one. And this is told through the perspective of three girls, Marin, Val, and Zoe. Marin suffered a recent loss in her family, so Marin, her mother, and her sister moved to Sawkill Island for a fresh start. Unfortunately for Marin, this isn't the start she had in mind, as she quickly becomes involved in the mystery of this island and its disappearing girls. Val is like the queen bee of the island. She's known and loved by just about everyone except for Zoe. But Val has some deep, dark secrets of her own. And Zoe has been obsessed about finding out the truth about what happened to her friend Thora. She doesn't know how, but she's convinced that Val and her family has something to do with Thora's disappearance and the disappearance of the girls on the island for the past decade. The way Zoe, Val, and Marin's stories come together and intersect is very interesting. I liked each of the girls, but probably my favorite was Val. I liked seeing her character arc and seeing her change and some of the internal struggles that she goes through. This story does include paranormal, supernatural elements, so if that's not your thing, you might not enjoy this, but I really had a lot of fun with it. But there are some downsides, which is why I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So one of the downsides for me was the men bashing. Now, while I'm all for women empowerment, I don't like seeing men being brought down or bashed on just for being men. Like, yes, there are some terrible men out there, but there are some really great men out there as well. Just like not every woman is innocent, there are terrible women out there as well. Nothing is black and white. And so I don't think we should demonize or angelize. It's not really a word, but I'm making it up. Go with it. You know what I mean? I don't think we can demonize or angelize one gender or another. And unfortunately, that seems to be a trend that I'm starting to see in some books and TV shows. And I'm just like, you can empower women without bringing down guys. You don't have to tear down one group to bring up another one. So, can we stop doing that already? So that was one of my issues. My other issue, which is kind of related to that one, is the men in here did not feel like they were fleshed out and they were real characters. They felt like they were just there to move the plot along. So I wish there were more to the main characters, and I wish they were fleshed out a bit more. But those were kind of my 2 downsides. Other than that, I really enjoyed this story. The next book is The Lady Rogue by Jen Bennett. And this is about a girl named Theo whose father is this treasure hunter. And one day her father goes missing while on his latest hunt for the legendary and magical ring that once belonged to Vlad the Impaler, aka Dracula. So Huck, her father's assistant and protege, goes to Theo for help. Huck is also her ex. And together they journey to Romania to search for clues to find her father. And along the way they encounter this dangerous occult society that's also looking for Vlad's ring and will get rid of anyone in their way to get it. So I really enjoyed this one. It's action-packed, it's fast-paced, And I loved learning about the mythology and the lore in here. We get stories of how werewolves came to be, and the witch in the woods, and Dracula, of course. So I really liked how all the mythology was woven into this. And I think that's probably my favorite part of this story. I did like the main character, Theo. She reminded me of Evie from the Diviners because she's really funny. She's funny in her own way, but she's also really reckless and impulsive. And so I'm like, that's Evie. Funny but reckless and impulsive. But I did really like her character. The twist at the end I thought was interesting, but you can see it coming. Like, it's pretty obvious what's gonna happen. Um, Another thing I really appreciated with this book is that, as far as I know, this is a standalone. It's a YA fantasy standalone, which you don't really see many standalones for fantasy, not that I've seen. And so I really appreciated that about this book, especially because lately I've been wanting to read more standalones rather than get into big series. So I appreciated that. The next book is The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw. And this story is about a town where 2 centuries ago, the people in this town accused these 3 sisters of being witches, and they ended up drowning them. So now every summer, the sisters come back for a couple of weeks, and they inhabit the body of girls in the town and get revenge on the town by luring boys into the water to drown. I'll say the premise of this story sounded more interesting than it actually was. It was an entertaining read, but very predictable. There's also a romance in here, but again, very insta-lovey. And I'm just like, can we kill the insta-love trope already, please? This one is a quick, light read, and it's very atmospheric, so it's perfect for fall, and I see why other booktubers recommend it for fall, because of the atmosphere and the vibe of the book. So if you want something that's atmospheric, that has witches in a cursed town, and you don't mind insta-love, then, this might be a good read for you. But just don't expect too much from this book. The next one is Teeth in the Mist by Dawn Kurtagich. This story follows 3 main female characters, all from different time periods. We mostly get the perspectives of 2 of the characters, Zoe and Rowan, and we see bits of Hermione's story through her diary entries. So Zoe's perspective is modern day. Rowan's takes place in 1851, and Hermione's is in 1583. I didn't know much about this story going into it, other than it was Dawn Kurtagich's newest book, and I loved her 2 other books, and so I really wanted to pick this one up and read. So that being said, I think it's best going into this not knowing too much, but I will read you one small part of the synopsis to maybe get you a bit more interested. And it says, 3 women, centuries apart, drawn together by one unholy pact. A pact made by a man who more than 1,000 years later may still be watching. So there's that to kind of give you a taste of some of the creepy vibes in this book. I loved it. If you love horror, you'll probably really enjoy this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I will say I did feel like it took me a long time to get into Rowan's story. I was much more interested in Zoe's. Um, but once I got into her story, I feel like then the book really picks up. This is when I recommend having the audiobook and the physical book and reading them both at the same time. The audiobook is great. It has a cast of characters, it has sound effects. Really get the whole creepy vibe of this book. It's very atmospheric. But then the physical book, you have some creepy pictures that are in the book as well. So you don't want to miss out on the pictures. And the audiobook is amazing. So I recommend both of them. The next book that I read, this was a nonfiction, and that's Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. This is a writing craft book for screenwriters. I'm not a screenwriter, but I've heard other writers, novelists, talk about this book and say that it's helpful for novel writing as well. So I decided to get the audiobook from my library and give it a try. I will say, while there are some points in here that I think are helpful, I feel like a lot of it doesn't pertain to novel writing. The principles and the beats, yes, I can see that being used, but a lot of the other stuff he says, getting into world building and, not having complexity with their characters or your plot, I disagree with that. I think it's a good thing having complex and layered characters and plots. So I feel like that would be a good thing in movies too. So I don't know, but I didn't agree with everything in there. I will say, I think right now I'm currently reading Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and this one is specifically for authors and novelists, and it uses some of the principles from the original Save the Cat, but applies it to novel writing. And I think so far I'm enjoying that one a lot more. So far I think that one is better and more helpful for novelists for crafting their stories. Next is Dead Girl Society by Michelle Kreis. And this is about a girl named Hope who has cystic fibrosis, so she leads a very sheltered life. Because of her breathing issues, her mom tries to keep her really close, and at one point even pulls her out of school to kind of keep a close eye on her. So she's very sheltered. She wasn't allowed to do much growing up. And then one day, Hope gets this invitation in her email from the society telling her to go to this address to play a game. And Hope is like not sure where this invitation came from or who sent it or what's going on. She's not sure if it's a joke or if this is something real or what. But, she decides to go. And when she gets there, she sees 4 other girls that were from her school, and they all got the same invitation. And so when they get there, they find a note telling them, how the game works, and there's going to be these dares they have to do. And if they complete it and make it to the end, then one of them will win $100,000. So, of course, they all decide to do it. And, Hope is kind of like, since she's had so much of a shelter life, she's really wanting that excitement and, wanting to do things. So she ends up, participating as well. I gave this one 2.5 stars. The premise was really interesting, but I felt like more could have been done here, and it kind of just fell flat. I feel like the main character, Hope, makes some really stupid, idiotic decisions, and she's really slow at putting two and two together and figuring out who's behind this. Because I was like, how do you not see what's right there in front of you? So, I don't know. But honestly, I think this story would probably work better as a show. There's several times when I thought, I was comparing it to Pretty Little Liars, and I thought this is kind of similar to that. Which, speaking of adaptations, there's a movie on Netflix currently called Would You Rather. And when I first read this book, the beginning of it and finding out what the note said and the cash prize, it reminded me of the movie Would You Rather. And in the movie Would You Rather, participants are invited to this billionaire's house to play a game of Would You Rather. And whoever makes it to the end wins a huge cash prize, and all the losers end up dead. Of course, no one knows this until the start of the game, but by then it's too late to back out. And I thought that this book was going to be similar to that because of, one, the cash prize, and then two, the consequences that it said the girls would have if they try to back out of the game or not play by the rules. There would be certain consequences. And so I thought this was going to end up being like that movie, but it just never really went there. And at first I thought, maybe it's because it's a YA book, so they were going the safe route. They didn't take it as dark. But then I was like, but wait, there's some pretty dark YA books out there. So, I don't know. I felt like this story, there could have been done more with it, and the stakes just don't feel as high. In any case, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great either. The next book is One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. I literally did not know anything about this book other than several people have loved it, and there's a character who is lying, as the title implies. So that's pretty much all I knew about it, and it's a thriller. So I went into this pretty blind, and that's what I'm going to recommend you do as well. So I'm not going to tell you anything about this, except that it was a new favorite read of mine for this year. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I did not see that twist coming until right before they revealed it, like a page or two before. I was like, whoa, wait, are they actually doing this? So I really enjoyed it. I loved it. And yeah, that's what I'm going to tell you. Go into this blind. The next book, so the last 2 books on here, I'm also going to suggest going into them blind, because that's what I did, and I think I enjoyed them a lot more this way. So the next one is Sadie by Courtney Summers, and the only thing I knew about Sadie was that it's a mystery thriller. Several booktubers loved it, and there's a character named Sadie. That's really all I knew. So again, go into this one kind of blind. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I really liked the writing style and how it was written, and it also deals with some pretty heavy topics, which I tend to enjoy in contemporary books. Um, but I will say there are some content warnings to be aware of. So this does deal with stuff like sexual abuse, addiction, and the death of a child. And that is not a spoiler, so don't worry about that. But yeah, it does deal with some pretty heavy topics. One of the downsides with this was I felt like the characters were not fleshed out enough, except for Sadie. I felt like all of the other characters were pretty flat. That's pretty much all I can say without giving away too much. Like I said, you should go into this one blind. But yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. The last book on this list is The Finishing School by Joanna Goodman. Again, go into this one blind. This is a mystery thriller that takes place at a boarding school. That's all I knew. That's all you should know going in. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I was not expecting those twists that were in here, probably because I knew nothing about this book going into it. So yeah, that's why I say go in not knowing anything. I did not want to put this book down. The mystery was great. It kept me on the edge of my seat trying to figure out what happened. My only downside is the ending felt a little too quick. I wish there was more to the ending, but other than that, I really enjoyed this one. This one I will also give content warnings for. This one deals with sexual abuse and also suicidal characters. So know that there's that. Um, but this was a really good one as well. So that's it for this video. Those are all 15 books. This is going to be a super long video and a pain to edit, but that's pretty much it. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of them. And let me know what are some of your favorite mystery thriller books. Alright, I will see you guys soon with another video. Bye.